Welcome to It Comes in Pints, a Seattle Study Club podcast where we will explore a myriad of topics: clinical, health and well-being, psychological, education, business, and much more. I'm your host, Greg Tice.
I'm Katherine Eitel Belt, and I'm the founder of LionSpeak, and we specialize in leadership communication coaching.
I'd like to welcome everyone to the next episode of It Comes in Pints, a Seattle Study Club podcast with me, your host, Greg Tice. Our guest today is Katherine Eitel Belt, and Katherine, as many of our listeners already know, my intention for this is for it to be like you and I are sitting down in a pub and having a conversation.
Oh, if we only were.
If we only were. But we can simulate that, which means we're going to be drinking during the conversation. So what have you brought with you today as your beverage of choice?
Well, it's my beverage of choice at 3 o'clock on a Tuesday. Let's just be real. Let's be real. But I brought a non-alcoholic athletic little pale ale called Upside Dawn. And I have it in my little Belt Tap House frosted mug. So
that's nice.
It's cheating, but not cheating.
Yeah, I love an athletic. So I will tell you, it is also 3 o'clock on a Tuesday for me. I'm not behaving quite as well. The other day, I found this great little distillery called Pursuit Distillery, just south of Seattle, that makes a cold brew coffee whiskey.
Oh, nice.
So I decided today was the day to try it. So I'm having some cold brew coffee whiskey from Pursuit Distillery. So to start us off, Katherine, cheers.
Cheers. Cheers.
All right. All right. So first question, not really question, intro. You and I, so full disclosure, you and I have known each other a very long time. We were introduced, if I remember correctly, by Marty Wade.
We were.
Marty Wade had come to you for some coaching and called me like halfway through and said, dude, you need to talk to this person.
That made my week.
So we owe this to Marty.
Yes.
But you have an interesting path into teaching, consulting, speaking. Let everybody know, tell us how you got started, because I think it's a fascinating story.
Well, how I got started in dentistry was through a boss that was extraordinary. I didn't realize how extraordinary at the time. Now that I teach leadership skills, I realize he was eons ahead. But I was just a chairside dental assistant to put gas in my little Chevette. Like, it was just a job. No dreams at all of this becoming a career. And he got a belly full and decided that he wasn't going to play that game. That wasn't the game he wanted to play. And so he essentially fired me. I mean, literally gave me my final paycheck, took me aside after work and said, listen, I've decided I no longer need dental assistants in my practice, and so I'm laying you off. And I remember begging for him to give me another chance. And he said, I wish I could, but I can't. He said, but however, I'm going to start interviewing for a new position tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. And I really hope you show up for the interview, but it's a brand new position. New job description, new title, new pay scale, new thing. And here's what I know. You don't show up, you're going to be just fine. I'm not angry with you. We're going to exchange Christmas cards for years to come. We're good, If you don't show up, I'm going to be fine. We're all good. And it's just, but I realize I've been lowering my bar. And I decided today I'm not lowering my bar for you or anybody else. My bar's up here. And I don't have any doubt that you are bright enough and capable enough to reach that high bar. What I can't answer is if you're ready or if you even want to. Yeah. And so go home and sleep on it, and then you let me know. So I showed up the next day for the interview, got the dental colleague. He never called it a dental assistant. He called it forever a dental colleague across the chair. And Greg, you know this. You've been in the industry long enough. 45-ish years ago, there weren't too many auxiliary attending upper level CE
Yes.
with a doctor. If there was someone else in the audience, it wasn't very many. I was usually the only one. And I didn't understand at that level of education, clinical education, I didn't understand 90% of what they were talking about. But he would just patiently explain it, take me back to the practice. We'd look at models, we'd look at photos, we'd look at x-rays. And, over time, you learn it. And before I knew it, I was his liaison with specialists. I was his liaison with the lab. I remember, I just told this story recently. I remember coming up, we went to an evening study club, and I came up behind him. I'd gone to get a cup of tea or something, and he didn't see me that I'd come up behind him, but another doctor had said, "How do we get a Katherine?" And he said, "You don't. You don't find her, you build her."
Yes.
You don't find them, you build them.
Yep.
And that's really my story. When I think back, it's an extraordinary story of someone that really had like the first courageous conversation with me. I was the lucky recipient of someone who held a really tight boundary and a high standard and uplift. I remember walking out to my car with my final paycheck thinking, why am I smiling? Pretty sure I just got fired. Got the evidence, I just got fired. But think about, that's pretty extraordinary that I thought he was old at the time. He was probably 35 or something. But I think about this young dentist firing this grossly underperforming young woman, send her out to her car with her final paycheck and have her feel better about herself than before he fired her is kind of a trick, so
pretty amazing. Ahead of his time, ahead of their time.
Ahead of his time. So what a great example for me. Yeah.
One of the things, and I don't know if you recognize this or not, I'm sure you do, but one of the things that makes me think of is, in essence, all of those conversations you were having with him were grounding you in the rationale and justification for the decisions he was making clinically, which closes the trust gap, right? There's trust to me in any way, in most dental practices is hovering around a 92% mark. They like the doctor, they're comfortable with them. But that last 6 or 7% is faith. Like, they're a good person, I like them, I'm sure they're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
But if we can close that gap, if the team can understand why is the doctor making those decisions, the performance level just crazy change.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that's exactly right. And that's exactly what I think we're going to explore today. How do we have the courage to have those? A lot of doctors feel like, well, I want to, but they don't really want to learn, or the new generations, the younger generations, or, don't really care. And so there's lots of things in the mix of why we don't have that gap closed. And I would love to explore that today and maybe bust some beliefs and some myths around it.
Yes. All right. So let's start right there. We're going to jump ahead a little bit. We'll come back to set you up because you are an expert at what you do, and we can set that up in the middle, at the end, doesn't matter.
Okay.
When people work together every day for 8 hours a day, however many hours it is, every single day, especially in a practice, they start to think in similar patterns and similar speeds and similar ways. And I would define that as a practice culture in a certain sense. But let's start here. How would you define culture, in particular in a practice?
A culture is what we routinely do and believe and feel. That's really what it comes down to. It's what on any given day, high stress, medium stress, low stress, people do, people say to one another, people believe and think.
And what they tolerate.
And what they tolerate, right? And that's a culture. The truth is, we always have a culture. Families have a culture. Any group of people that comes together they have a culture. So it isn't that people are having to go make it happen. It automatically happens when we bring people together on a regular basis. The question becomes, are we purposeful about it? Are we intentional about it, right?
That's where I wanted to go.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's the follow-up question, right? Because in my experience, 9 times out of 10, a culture just happens. People are not intentional about it. They're not purposeful about it. It's a conglomeration of the personalities and the ways people interact with each other. Can we intentionally create a culture, or is it just a byproduct of the peoples and personalities in the practice?
Yes to both. Yes to both. Yes to both. You absolutely can, and it's easier than you think. And it will always be a byproduct of those personalities that come together. However, it often is more strongly influenced by the strongest personalities, which isn't always the owner.
Yes.
Right. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. And so cultures are not set in stone. They shift as one personality leaves, that style leaves, and another comes in. It's a living, breathing thing. And so that's why the one person that will always be at the core of this business, this group, is going to be the owner. Other people will come and go. And so in this beautiful country that we live in, I could get on a soapbox about this. If we choose to take on the risk of owning a business, which we have the luxury to do if we want to, and we take the risk, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I've worked for people and I've owned a business. I've done both. And so when we choose to work for someone, we're essentially stepping into their vision, their future, their value system. And our goal as an employee is to decide, to get clear on that and decide if we align professionally with that and personally with that, if it's a good alignment for us. The same is true for the owner. We can have it any way we want. I have a client that starts seeing patients at 7 o'clock in the morning. Their huddle is at 6:30 in the morning. He expects people clocked in by 6:20. So when they interviewed a young single mother of 3 school-age children, she was struggling to figure out how she was going to make that morning schedule work, because part of her vision for her life is to be with those children, take them to school, spend the morning with them, right? If we don't judge it, if we just said the key word is, does it align? Is it in alignment or is it out of alignment? Forget about whether it's right or wrong or good or bad. So
Right.
we're just looking for alignment there, and so it's from the owner, either their absence in that intentional creation of the culture or in their creation of it, that is what makes it's the deciding factor. It's the deciding factor.
So let me push you a little bit here.
Okay.
And we're going to play both sides of this coin. So I am a highly engaged employee who really wants this practice to do well. I've been there X number of years, so I'm not brand new. But my doctor's not intentionally helping set a culture, set a standard. What can I do? Right? I don't have positional authority. If and I'll use your words, and I was going to call you out on it, but I didn't, just an assistant. Nobody's just an assistant. But I understand where you were going. It was just a job.
That's how it felt then, yeah.
But I'm an assistant, or I'm handling insurance, whatever it is. But I really want this to grow and be great. And what can I do? Like, how do I influence that?
So interesting. I just earlier today had one of our lessons in our Leadership Academy, and this came up. I taught a workshop a while back on this subject, and the pre-work for the workshop was, if you were an owner coming to the workshop, you had to print out what we call our company charter kit, and you had to fill it out. It includes a statement of purpose, your mission statement. What is the future you're creating? Like, where do we want to be in 3 to 5 years? And they had to be very specific about it. What are your values? And what are the cultural team agreements you'd like to see in place? How we operate culturally. So all those things had to be filled out. If you were an administrator or an office manager coming to this workshop without your owner, your job was to get your owner to fill it out and then bring it with you. And so when we got to this part in the course, I said, all right, everybody get their company charter documents out. We're going to use those as we go forward. I said, does everybody have them? And one gal raised her hand and she said, I actually don't. And I said, how come? And she said, well, I handed that packet to my owner. He took one look at it, pushed it right back across the desk and said, I'm not filling this out. That's what I hired you for. You fill it out. Oof. And I said, oh, well, how do you feel about that? And she said, well, I don't know how I feel about that. Part of me thinks I could. If I owned this business, I know exactly where I'd take it. I know exactly what I'd do. I can see a big, bright future, and I believe I could rally the troops, and I believe we could make it happen. But I don't own it. And I don't know if that's where he wants to go. And I said, okay, well, you have a couple of choices. You could go back and say, I'm interested in that assignment, but I would only do it under these conditions. It would be his total 100% support. It is because he's basically, handing that over and abdicating that responsibility and the authority of that to you. I would make sure he was clear that if...
Or let me add a piece here, or potentially he's going, I may not be capable of this.
That's
or
right.
interested in that.
That's
and
right.
I recognize that in you. Like
That's
just
right.
to put the positive spin on it. So please, and he may just not have the skills to go, you do this, please.
He may not have the skills. There's also they may not want, you said it, they may not want to. There are some, and who are we to judge?
Yes.
In this country, a business owner can have it any way they want.
Yeah.
They never want to see a kid under 12. They never want to do a molar root canal. They never want to, that you don't have to. You never want to work on a Monday, right? Or whatever. And so we get to have it any way we want. The trouble is we often, and I find this particularly with clinicians, when you choose something very definitively, you've just also said no to something definitively. And that's hard for a lot of people. And so, but it's essential to being clear, which is the most important leadership communication tool of them all, is clarity. And so we can't give clarity away we don't have. So I said to her, you can go back and say, I'm interested, here are my conditions, right? If he says, great, let's go, he agrees to the conditions, off you go, you see how you do. If he doesn't, you say, absolutely, it's your practice. You can have it any way you want. Now, just so you know, I now have a decision about whether this will be in alignment with my career choices, with my own personal values, and I will stay in communication with you about that. And I said, really, truthfully, if there are no victims here, if we could just step into a world where no victims, and I say that I do think there are some victims in the world. There are people who have things happen that are out of their control. But in terms of like the professional setting that we're talking about, there's a lot of people who point fingers at the boss, point fingers at the mean mad manager, or managers that point the fingers at the millennials and the Gen X and the Gen Z. And there's just all this finger pointing. And so if we want to remove that, we have to empower ourselves and then empower others with choice. With choice.
Yep.
So what's your choice? What's the choice for the owner? What's the choice for that office manager? What's the choice?
Yeah. And I love that. At the same time, that requires us to put our big boys and girls pants on and step up a little bit.
But it's also free.
If we're in that scenario. It is, but it's a hard line to cross, I think, it would be for me. And you know me well enough and know me long enough to know there are certain things I'll push back on immediately, and others I'm like, it's just not worth the battle.
Yeah,
so.
We all decide those things. We all decide, and those move over time,
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I just think own your. Like I've worked for a boss before. My children were very little. I had 2 boys. They were very small, and I didn't have a lot of money. And I was working for a company that within 2 weeks I knew this was not going to be a company that I aligned with ethically, morally, or any other way. And so, but I had 2 little mouths at home to feed. I couldn't just quit. And so I worked there for 6 months until I found something better. But what I'm talking about is if you make that choice, then don't blame the boss.
Yeah.
Own the choice. That's all.
Yes.
Step up and say, I'm doing this for all the right reasons. I have 2 little boys to feed. I need a job. I can't just quit. And, because I'm upset, I need to do this logically and carefully. And I own the choice. So I'm not going to go to work for 6 months and be mad at them. I'm going to just own. It's freeing. It's empowering. That's the whole point of clarity and choice, is that our happiness and our satisfaction isn't dependent upon what other people do or don't.
Yes. So let's run with this thread for a little bit, because I love the choice piece. And personally, I believe that there are only 3 have-tos for human beings. Everything else is a choice. We have to be born, we have to die, and we have to choose. There is no other thing that is not a choice. Well, what about paying taxes? Don't pay your taxes. Well, then I'll get arrested. Well, that's the consequence, but you're
right. Didn't say there wasn't a consequence. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, there is one other physics-based that one person in an audience threw out at me once, and they said, if you think about physics, you have to take up space. I'm like, oh,
okay, 4, 3.5.
But so using that as a base, we all have choice pretty much in everything we do. And there are trade-offs, and we need to be willing to accept the consequences and the rewards of those choices. But I want to talk about how that relates to accountability. And I want to know how you think about accountability, because I don't like the word. The word seems punitive to me. I like, and I know I'm being semantic here, but I feel like stewardship or ownership is a more proactive term there. But let's just give me your general feeling and how you teach around accountability, ownership, stewardship, and choice to both team and doctor in these scenarios.
Yeah, there's so much to unpack. We've got 3 hours, right?
Yeah, we've got a long time.
Okay, short story. I think the short story is we teach, I call it the trifecta. It's the leadership conversation trifecta. And it's a hierarchy of 3 conversations. The first one is the invitation conversation. Second is a coaching conversation. And the third is a courageous conversation. And I contend that you'll have fewer courageous, more confrontational conversations if you do the first 2 well and in that order. And when you do have one, it will go better. And the reason that is that it starts with this invitation conversation, which is driven initially by the owner. It's crafted using this company charter kit. They get real clear on where are we going, what are we building, and who do we need to be or become along the way. That's what they're deciding. And then they are using the vehicle of a team calibration retreat or some sort of a meeting to deliver that invitation to their people. And we don't ask people that day for their decision, but we do tell them within a week, whoever you report to will be meeting with you and asking if you have questions, if you have concerns, and if you are accepting our invitation into the work, into the growth, into the push, into the standards, into the agreements, into the culture. And if you raise your hand and you step across the threshold the next day, we take that and hear that as a yes, I'm in. And then immediately that initiates the very first coaching check-in, monthly coaching check-in at a minimum. And those coaching conversations, different than supervision. Supervision is scanning the environment for what's wrong and going in really quickly and fixing it. Coaching, scanning the same environment for untapped potential, untapped growth. How can we grow people? And so those are very different skills, and most managers have never been taught to coach. If you ask a manager, and I do, what's your number one priority? Number one priority as a manager. They will give you some HR function. Typically, they'll say, my job's to make sure we got coverage on vacations.
Payroll.
Payroll. If my people have a question, that I get them the answer, And all of those things are important for sure. very task oriented, right? But hardly anyone ever says, my number one priority is growing my people, is growing other superstars on the team.
Yep.
And so you can see where that invitation from an owner's perspective starts it like ignites the fire of accountability. And when we coach owners to stand up before, because we usually facilitate those retreats, but the one piece of it we cannot do is deliver this invitation. We do not own this company. And so we coach owners ahead of this, because the last thing we want them to do is create confusion. So we want to make sure they're super clear and they're super inspirational when they deliver it. And so we coach them. And what we tell them is, you've got to model the very thing you want to see. If I ask a whole group of people, I do all the time, raise your hand if you want to work on this team. It's filled with people who are problem solvers, they're critical thinkers, they're good communicators, they're team players, they're good at their jobs, they are accountable for their results, they're accountable for the quality of their relationships, and they're accountable for their inevitable mistakes. Who wants to work on that team? Everybody raises their hand. I'll raise both my hands. That's the team I want to work on.
Yeah.
So I say, if that's the team you want to work on and work with and have working for you, you have to go first. Leaders have to go first. You know, I've had people say to me, why do I have to be their parent? Why didn't their parents teach them this? And I say, they probably should have, but they didn't. They didn't.
This is what you've got.
This is what we got. And so we have to model it. So I say to the owners, if you stand up there and say, the state of this business, there's one person that's responsible for that, and it's me. And I've had owners say all kinds of things. Not too long ago, we had a practice owner outside of Chicago. He stood up and he put up on his PowerPoint, he put up an eraser going across a chalkboard, and it said clean slate. He said, I want to own something, and I want to ask for your willingness to let me wipe the slate clean and start over.
Wow.
Yep. He said, this won't be news to many of you, I have been highly frustrated with our performance, highly frustrated with the culture, highly frustrated with attitudes, with people coming in late, all kinds of things. And I have shown that frustration in a lot of really weird ways. And that's on me. And I realized that if this was going to change, I was going to have to change. And I've gotten some coaching, and I am learning to be a different, better leader. And I am asking for a reboot. I'm asking to punch the counters to zero and start over. And starting today, I intend to show up as a very different leader. And I am asking all of you that are interested in creating a better culture than we've been swimming in to join me in this. And I'm going to provide the resources and the work, but I am not going to stay here. And I just want you to know I'm not holding anyone on this team responsible except for me. And I'm going to be clearer than I've ever been about what I wanted. I'm going to be unapologetic about what I want. I'm not going to necessarily justify what I want. I'm going to be clear. And I'm going to honor that you have a choice to work wherever you want. I just want to be clear what that would be if you chose this practice. And I hope every one of you will stay. That's my hope. But if you don't, then not fired tomorrow, but we'll have a different conversation about how to get you someplace you can be happy. I'm going to be clear about where we're going. And I felt that whole team that was pretty frustrated with him because he had been crabby and, snapping and, just not good. and they leaned in, and it was like you could feel the collective, okay, let's go.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's huge. So my two takeaways from that were, one, that was a genuine invitation, right? Here's what I'm thinking. Here's where I want to go. I'm inviting you, if you choose to, Joyce, to come along. But the other, and I hadn't really thought about this a lot, was I'm not going to justify all of my decisions, all of my wants, all of my desires. As a leader, sometimes you don't need to justify those things.
Sometimes you don't know.
Yeah.
Like I like broccoli and my husband likes Brussels sprouts. Who knows why? Who knows why? Some guys like surgery and they like, Invisalign, and others like implants and sleep
Yeah.
sedation, conscious sedation. It doesn't matter. We like what we like. We want to do what we want to do and build what we want to build, and we get to do that in this country as an owner. And so our job is to be so clear about it that we find the people that it also excites them. It also aligns them. And it's the alignment. Alignment is the game. Alignment is the game. Now, people could say, I'm interested in the invitation, but I don't really know yet how to do it. I don't know how to sell those cases. I don't know how to assist on that level of dentistry, or I don't know how to solve my own issues with my coworker. I don't know how to do it. And so we say, no problem. That's where the second conversation, those coaching conversations, that's where they come in. You just have to be willing to come in align. That's it.
Commit. We'll figure out the how later. We'll
Yeah.
figure out the how.
Yeah.
So define accountability for me then in your head, because we started there. You mentioned that a couple of times, but what does, in particular from a team member standpoint, what does accountability look like?
I think it is just owning whatever wherever you are. So for sure, an easy one is you make a mistake, you don't point out, you just say, I made a mistake, right? That's ownership of the reality. I once heard a quote. This was the quote. I may butcher it a little bit, but it said, the person who will emerge in any situation, the person who will emerge the leader will be the one who can articulate the reality of a situation without blame, without fear, and without judgment, I think was the other thing.
Yeah. Huge.
Isn't that a great definition? The
love
person
that.
who could articulate the reality of a situation without blame, judgment, or fear. And that is accountability. Doesn't matter what role you play. That's that owner standing up saying, I'm not pointing a finger at anybody. All the fingers point to me, and I'm going to fix it, and I hope you're along for the ride I want you to be. It's an employee that comes up and says, I've been doing the best I can, and I feel like it's not enough, but truthfully, I don't have clarity about what I'm supposed to do or how I succeed in my job. And what I realized is I could have asked you a long time ago, and I never did. And I'm asking you now. I'm asking you, if you want me to be successful at a certain level, can you give me the clarity of what that looks like? Without the clarity, I can't guarantee I will. That's someone who's accountable for their reality.
Yes. Because I'm sure you've been asked, but and talk to me about how you would coach this employee who says, I'm willing to own my mistakes, but I'm afraid to admit them. And in reality, it's because many of us are afraid of the embarrassment from failure. It's not the failure itself. But they say to you, I'm worried he's going to get mad. She's going to get mad, that they're going to fire me, that I'm going to get in trouble. That's a barrier, I think, to accountability, to ownership, to stewardship. How do you coach through that?
Well, they won't create the safety. It's the owners and the managers that create the safety for people to be human. I've been late to work. You've probably been late once or twice. I've missed a plane once or twice, I remember missing quite a few planes until I went, okay, well, this is stupid, like, why don't I just get up a little earlier,
Yeah.
So, at some point we learn from the mistakes and we make different choices and our life gets better. And so I think, this safety in that example is created or not created by leadership, by the culture that's driven by the leadership. But if someone wanted to come clean, then I would say to my boss, am I right in assuming that if I made a mistake that was unintentional and had every desire to right it and never make it again, you would want me to feel safe coming clean on that? Would that be a fair statement? And I would set myself up for that success.
Yeah. Oh, I like that.
You see, I would say, what are my choices here? I can not tell you, or I can tell you, and I'm just confirming that you want to hear it.
Yeah.
I'm confirming that you want to hear my intention around this mistake, this human mistake. People are going to make mistakes. It's not the I'm late once. It's the I'm late every other day. And still I don't blame the employee. I blame anyone who's tolerating that and not having the courageous conversations around it. But people are going to they're going to make mistakes. We're human. And so I do think safety is a huge, and as you talked about trust, I mean, that is a huge piece of a really healthy culture. That is not to say we make it safe to make mistakes over and over and over because we're actually afraid to confront it. That's often what I see is management is afraid to confront what in it. I mean, I tell audiences all the time, I don't think you should hold your standards. Most of you need to raise your standard. We've been on this slippery slope of this little slide since COVID, like down, 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 down.
Yep.
And you don't have to. My opening story is a good example that you can actually hold people, their feet to the fire you want them to be in, and have them feel good about, because you're just not judging their choice. You're giving them choice and you're not judging their choice.
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about you for a little bit here. I want to come back sort of to where I wanted to go in the beginning, but this has been way too much fun to have these side conversations, because you've worn a lot of hats in this industry. Mm-hmm. You've been a speaker, a consultant, a coach, a speaking coach, which was how we met. You've been an influencer. Talk to me about where you are now. Are you still wearing all of these different hats? What does life look like for Katherine today, and where does she want to focus?
Yeah, it is all about focus, isn't it? Man, you know, I told Tom a couple days ago, my husband, that I wish I was 40. Because I feel like I just got it. Like I got it. Like focusing a long time ago would have been better. My journey was I got into coaching after I left, working in a dental practice. I worked for a coaching company and didn't love the company, but fell in love with coaching. And then broke away, wrote my own program, and was, as you know, I was a practice management consultant, full consultant for a couple of decades. And I loved it. But I recognized there were pieces I really enjoyed more than others. So I didn't love billing and coding and HIPAA and OSHA and all those other things. I really loved the communications piece and the leadership
Scheduling.
piece. Yeah, right. I can do it, but it just was never lighting me up. So about 20 years ago or so, 15, 20 years ago, I narrowed my focus, rebranded as LionSpeak, narrowed to communications coaching only. And for many, many years, most of those years, we described it as we had a patient-facing communications track, so we still taught telephone skills and some of those things. We had a team-facing, which was the culture and leadership piece. And then I had an audience-facing communication, which was train the speaker and train the trainer. Yeah. And so
Which I've been through, by the way, and is fabulous. So she's going to tell you she's not doing it anymore, but we will all call her and say you need to keep doing it. So.
I know. I'm hoping that I may have someone interested in taking that torch and continuing it.
Great.
Because I think the industry needs it. But it's funny how some of that's rolled into our leadership coaching, because leaders, managers in particular, especially in dental practices that have scaled, they need internal trainers. They need internal coaches that know how to build great trainings and meetings that are interesting and engaging and those things. So we haven't lost it completely. But I did just sell I'm so happy it was announced yesterday. I sold my intellectual property on the telephone skills training to Mango Voice.
Okay, breaking news. Here we go.
Yeah. And so they have taken my system, my coaching program for telephone skills, and they have merged it with their technology. So now there is an AI patient that administrators can role play with this AI.
Like training. Oh,
Yes,
wow. Very
yes.
cool.
So it's very cool. Go check it out. We're so excited about it. But I don't have to teach it anymore. Really, there was no, I mean, the old school mystery shopper calls we used to do are just outdated. And I think this is a much safer way for people to practice. So yeah, so go check that out. So that is no longer being offered by LionSpeak. And then I no longer officially do train the speaker and train the trainer. I am doing one more course this fall in September in DC. And then I occasionally, if someone's personally referred to me, I'll do some speakers coaching. But our primary goal for the next however long I'm going to work, 5 to 10 years, is really, we have had a leadership academy that's been extremely successful. What I'm doing this weekend is putting all of that into some evergreen content so that people don't have to wait for a course to start and they don't have to come at a particular time. So we'll still have live coaching, we'll still have all of that, but they'll be able to consume the content whenever they want to. So I'm excited about sort of moving that content as a really good curriculum, really good for managers. You know, a lot of times I find as these dental businesses expand and grow, about 5 to 8 practices, they've got to have a leadership team or the wheels are coming off the bus. And they tend to go to the best hygienist and tap him or her on the shoulder and say, hey, can you make the other hygienist as great as you are? Or an assistant or associate doctor or whatever it is. And so the skills they need to turn all those other people into superstars are very different from what it took to be a superstar. And so we kind of set them up for failure. So this Leadership Academy is really dedicated to giving them the skills no one gave them, how to coach, how to have a confrontational, hold a boundary conversation and not destroy the relationship, how to onboard someone really well into our culture so that once we get the culture stabilized the way we want, we don't upset it with a new hire, how to run a good meeting, how to, so a lot of those kinds of things are what we teach in the academy.
Okay, so from all of those things that you were doing, you've really narrowed scope to leadership and communication. Yeah. Yet you have the academy, you have a ton of projects going on. Mm-hmm. And the one I want to start with is the book. Wow. So, which I was fortunate enough to receive a galley copy of. Mm-hmm. And just to name drop, a lot of folks have supported you in this, including Mark LeBlanc, Simon Bailey, Beth Johnson, Linda Miles, just to name a few, name dropping. But let's start here. Why a book?
I feel like it's my legacy piece. And it took me a long time to write this, but I feel like I've just birthed a 3-year pregnancy, honestly. A hard one. Because I wanted it to be good. I've read a lot of business books that I didn't think were all that good. And the ones that I do really go back to that I think are really substantial and good, took some time, did some research, have some real examples and some ways to walk through the process. And so I took my time with it. I got a writing coach and I really, a publisher, and I got serious about it. And so it feels like a legacy piece. I specifically wrote it so it's got the ability to go outside of dentistry. There are dental examples in there, but there are also the hospital example and, some different things. And so, because to me, I don't know about you, but I feel like we're living in a society right now, just turn on your news feed, where there's almost an epidemic of people with an inability to communicate when they have a difference of opinion in a respectful, dignified way. And
they don't even want to at this point, in general.
Yeah, because it hasn't gone well. Yeah. And truthfully, the skills are not that hard. We just haven't learned them. And so the book is really dedicated to helping anyone in a business context mostly, but there are some personal examples in there as well, because the skills are the same. And so it's a book dedicated to helping people hold their boundaries, hold a high standard, say what needs to be said without destroying the relationship, and hopefully building the relationship stronger.
Yes, which is not an easy thing to do.
No, but it's not as hard as people think. It's not impossible. people tell me all the time, oh, Catherine, I want to have this conversation,
Yeah,
but I'm
if you're
afraid that,
given the tools, right, and you're the
right,
expert in the tools, I'm the expert in X. This person is the expert
yeah,
in hygiene with their patients, and da, da, da. And until we're given the tools or find the tools to have those conversations, the unknown is always so scary.
it is. I think especially for dentists right now and managers, in this labor market, they're afraid. I mean, people tell me all the time, God, I'm afraid that if I have the conversation and it doesn't go well, this person's just going to quit, and they can, because
Yeah.
they can go right down the road and get a job right away. And I'm going to be 6 months trying to replace them, and I don't know if my business can survive it. And so I realize the fear is real. It's just that just sort of suggests there's only two options: have the conversation and risk losing them and the business implication of that, or don't have the conversation, tolerate the low performance and the business implication of that. And I'm just suggesting there's a third option. There's a third option where you can have both. And all you have to do is learn a few simple skills to do it.
Okay, so I want to read you. This is early in the book, but I want to read a sentence, paragraph from the book, and get your reaction to it, because this stood out to me very.
Well, no one's ever read a piece from the book, so my heart is beating fast.
It's my glasses have to go on so I can actually see it again. So, but this stood out to me because of what Seattle Study Club is about. It's about behavior change. It's about actually changing the way you practice dentistry, you run your life, and we're not here to tell you what that should look like, but how do we help you move you there? So this passage really stood out to me. And these are your own words. Every time this was early on in your career as a consultant, every time I would revisit a client's office, expecting to see evidence of the changes we had all agreed to at our last coaching session, I was disappointed to find not much had truly changed, and consequently the needle had not moved for my client. So that tells me, early on, you understood the value of real behavior change and not just collecting a check for being a consultant. So how do you get past that? Like, how do you help them actually create that behavior change?
It's not easy. I just read a statistic, or not a statistic, but a piece of research that said that our brain, to cut a neural pathway, to create a new neural pathway where this skill now has become second nature, 2 to 3 months of repetition.
Yep.
That's a long time, right? And so if that's a good indicator that making sustainable change when the coaches are gone, when the managers aren't looking, when nobody's recording, if we want sustainable change over time, it's going to take some time of repetition. It's going to take the messiness of change. It's kind of, and so that's one of the reasons I love the collaboration with Mango, that whole idea of practicing with an AI patient where the rest of the team doesn't have to see you struggle with the new skill.
Safe, but still messy. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I just realized clients were hiring me, and still are, for results, not for information. And for the first few years, I thought it was all my knowledge,
Amen.
Yeah. And so I had to learn how to help people through that messy piece of change. And if you've ever had any exposure to the recovery world, there's a understanding in the recovery groups that people only make permanent change or sustainable change if the pain of staying where they are is greater than the pain of the change.
100%. I love
Right?
that.
And so a lot of time we're expecting change from people that are perfectly comfortable where they are. I just coached a woman right before this podcast. She's in our academy, and they get some private hours they can use, and she's got to have a courageous conversation with someone on her team. And she said, I think they're very comfortable where they are. I said, well, but you aren't. And what you have not done is be truthful that this is a non-negotiable. her pain is going to go up if she wants to stay in this job, and she feels that without improving these skills, that's going to impact that. That's where that meter will move for her.
Yep.
And I'm not trying to say that we're going to always have some ultimatum to create the
No,
to
no,
create,
no, 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 no.
but that's what it is. It's like you can if this is how you want to operate, there are places you can do that, and that would be fine. And we're hoping you're going to choose to be here, but to be here, we need you to run on time, and we need you to learn to manage your time. And in the past, this is on us. We've talked about it. It gets better for a week, and then it's back to the same old.
Yep.
And then we wait until your next annual review to talk about it. And this year, we're not going to do that.
Yep.
This year is going to be, so it's like raising that bar and holding the bar.
That's the key. It to me is holding the bar, because the way I like to put it when I teach is we visualize the new. When that starts to become solid, we become dissatisfied with the old. And
Right.
change won't happen until you become dissatisfied with the old.
Right.
When the new picture doesn't match reality, that's when you go, all right, you know what? The windows in this car roll down so slow, even though it's a brand new car. I hate it because I'm picturing this other car over and over and over again.
Right.
And I don't like the way the trunk shuts and the gas mileage is whatever it is. As you become dissatisfied with that, that kicks that intrinsic motivation into gear to move you to the new. So
We move towards something we want or away from something we don't. It's
Yep.
really that simple. And so if we can, and a lot of what I work with managers and leaders on is helping people to articulate what do they want badly enough to make this change.
Yep.
And that's true from an employee back up the chain, and it's true down the chain and laterally. What does someone want badly enough to make this change? And if there's nothing, then that's a different conversation, right? And then you have a choice. If there's nothing they want to, then you have to make a choice.
Yep.
So, yeah.
So we're going to have to do this again because there is so much more for us to talk about. And but I do want to touch on a couple of other things. Number one, and you actually state this in the book, you hate scripts.
I do.
Tell me, why do you hate scripts?
Well, they just don't work. If people follow them when no one's looking, they do create consistency. That is one thing they create, and that is important to business. I'm a business owner. I mean, I would hope that if Greg called LionSpeak and spoke to Kelly, he wouldn't hear completely different information or have a different experience than if he talked to Stacy, right? And so there is an important piece to getting consistency of brand and messaging for businesses. But my experience is that most people, especially the larger the organization, the less likely a lot of people are going to follow a set script.
Do you not also feel like there's a lack of authenticity with
Well,
a
that's what I was
script?
going to say. There is this downside of scripting really the only downside of scripting is that we lose genuineness and the organic nature of a good conversation. I think patients and other team members know when a doctor or a manager's gone off to a course and learned how to do an employee review a certain way, and they come back and it sounds very stilted and very scripted. And so we just believe that if you use something we call a framework, where as long as the team will agree to be tested and to be evaluated on the use of the framework, meaning they hit the major points of the system,
Yeah.
then in that they get to be who they are. So I say, if they're funny, I ask teams, point to the funny one on your team. They all point to the same person. They do it every time. They know who they are. And I say, if you're funny, show up in that framework funny. Patients will respond to it. Your teammates will respond to it because they already know you are.
Yep.
If you're kind and gentle and the Southern belle of then show up big in that personality. I teasingly say, if you're direct, you get to be careful in the framework. But you get to be who you are. And I think it as long as you're following the framework, and we just try to keep them really simple. I don't think people remember 17 steps to something, so we try to keep it super simple that they can remember it. And that's what creates I'm the girl that says, why do I have to choose between consistency and authenticity? Why can't I have both? And the framework, I think, is the way you get both.
Yeah, absolutely. If you buy into the brand, into the culture, into the structure, you can be yourself within those parameters. I'm with you there. All right.
Yeah.
So the other thing you mentioned in the book is, because there is a lot of great, not only anecdotal advice, but structured advice. But one of the things you mentioned early on is, if you don't do the foundational pre-work first, the rest of the book, the rest of the coaching, the rest of whatever it is we're talking about is useless. Talk to me about, what is the foundational pre-work? What does that look like?
Well, sometimes in my courses, I say, I'm just going to tell you what you're getting ready to think. You're going to think, I thought I paid for a leadership course. This feels a whole lot like a personal growth workshop. Because if I gave you the framework, which is pretty simple, 4 steps to have a courageous conversation, it's not hard. Matter of fact, I've had people look at it and say, that's it? Yep, that's it. It's not hard. But if I gave it to you and you use that simple framework from an internal state of anger, high levels of frustration, judgment, resentment, fear, oh, I won't replace this employee, my business is going to suffer. If you're going to use the framework on that emotional platform, it will not work. Because most of our communication isn't through our words anyway. It's through our energy. It's through our facial expressions and body language and tone and pace, and all of that is actually what carries the truth. And so it matters what we believe. It matters where we are emotionally. And so I believe that, you've heard this before, this is not my phrase, but leadership is an inside-out job. We can't take someone to a place we've never been. So if we don't have clarity, they're not going. If we can't have some ability to quickly assess our emotional state and have some agency over moving it when we need to, then we can't expect others to do it. And so we have to go first. And so that whole first part of the book is about, first, can we raise our awareness around what state we're in and what we are, what limiting beliefs we're holding and where we are, and what we could take some responsibility for. Those are the 3 pieces. And then, can we then have a couple of tools that, if we find we're not in a good place, which we often aren't, something triggers us, it makes us angry, or we're frustrated. That's humans. And so that's just your first indicator. Okay, need to have a conversation, need to deal with this, but let me first go in instead of out. Let me go in, kind of right this ship, and then speak from a much more calm, positive, optimistic internal state.
Brilliant. Okay, so let's wrap this up a little bit. We have the book, we have the Leadership Academy that we've talked about. You've got a video curriculum that's also around leadership and similar concepts.
It's that third conversation. If somebody needs to have just a courageous conversation really quickly, that is a do-it-yourself, on-demand, really inexpensive. So it's on our website. It's easy. You just go in, watch the videos, and you can practice a courageous conversation you might need to have with someone on your team. And I think it's a great resource for managers, really anyone. Teams have used it. They've used it in their meetings and talked about it. I'm hoping they'll do that with the book. We're going to do a book club kit on the book that will be just for dental practices to use the book as the catalyst for their own conversations. And I'm excited about that. But that's similar. The videos are just about that third conversation, the conflict conversation. So I just wanted people to know that was definitely available.
And we'll put all of this in the show notes and links to all of that. But you also have team retreats. So what would those
so we do, you can get, our leadership mastery is everything. You get the videos, you get the academy, you get the retreat, but you can also do them a la carte. And so the retreat is that team alignment retreat, and it's generally offsite. We love to facilitate those. The morning is dedicated to getting the team aligned with the owner's company charter. And so we set the team up for what they're getting ready to hear, why they're getting ready to hear it, why it's their owners to claim, what's their relationship to it, how we want them to listen to it. We set all that up. We do a really fun exercise to kind of drive home how important this is. And then we get the owner up and the owner delivers their invitation. And then afterwards we kind of swoop back in and say, okay, what kind of questions do you have? What did you hear that excited you? What did you hear that worried you or that, you're confused about? And so we facilitate a discussion around the invitation. And then we do kind of a wrap up in the morning of that. And then the afternoon is customized. So sometimes we do skills training. Sometimes it's team building. But that retreat, we do it off of some of our clients, we've been doing it for 10 years, every year for them. So it's something we recommend, whether they use LionSpeak or not, that businesses would do with their company, take them off site, give them some clarity, reboot that thing every year, get people back in alignment, back engaged. And so we call it a team calibration retreat.
Brilliant. And I know you've got some value add tools you want to provide to anybody listening to this. So we will also include that in the show notes. That'll be right at the top. I do want to mention that as you can obviously tell, Katherine is a wealth of information, a wealth of value that can help you, your study club, your practice. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that she will be hosting the first day at our Directors Coordinators Summit in September in Louisville at Churchill Downs. So if you want to deep dive into some of this, and she's customizing even more for us, it's going to be super powerful and will be at the racetrack. It's going to be phenomenal.
I can't wait.
And we will do this again, because we have about 16 other areas we need to talk about as well.
Oh, but it's just so fun I know the culture at Seattle Study Club. I know what you guys stand for and what you're all about and what you're trying to help your partners to do and your clubs to do. And it's just an honor to be anywhere in the vicinity of that greatness. So thanks for inviting me.
Oh, thank you for being a part of it and contributing more than I think you probably realize to the entire organization. So thank you, and we will see you soon.
Cheers.
Thanks, Katherine. Good night.